Dear friends, we have reached the eighth Sunday in the ordinary time, and this time every year we will be transitioning to a new season. On Wednesday, we will begin the new season of Lent on Ash Wednesday. It is funny because people are still calling and asking, what day is Ash Wednesday? Definitely not a Thursday. So I just want to say Masses will be 8 in the morning. There is no vigil Mass because we cannot do it on Tuesday, okay? 8 o'clock Wednesday morning, then we have that 10 and 12, and there is one at 6 together with the faith formation, the families of the kids, 6 p.m. on Wednesday. So ashes will be available on that day. Now, the gospel reading today, powerful, beautiful words of Jesus. We will synthesize this gospel message and we will zero down on a very relevant theme. And we will talk about trust. Why do we have to trust in God? And I have mentioned this a million times before, that we have no problem with faith because there's a lot of faith. People have problem with trust. Now, answering that question, why do we have to trust in God? We will discover 3 points about the person of God that will help us earn the trust of others. How to be a trustworthy person. These things are very useful in our everyday relationships. You know, how do we get people to trust us? And we will, these 2 questions we will answer. Now, to begin with, why do we have to trust in God? The entire understanding of trust is found really on the person of God. He will show us from the very person of God what trust is. There are 3 points, very briefly, that I will give you. It will be a short homily because we'll have healing prayer at the end. But 3 points about trust that's very useful. In order to facilitate remembering these points, we will use one letter of the alphabet. That is the letter I. There are 3 I's that we will talk about regarding trust. Focus on the person of God Himself. The first I, letter I, is investing. Not in Wall Street, but investing first presence. You earn the trust of someone when you are present, which means that you care, you are there. And you know what? That is the very entire personality of God. It's all about presence. Presence of God. You know, we know that in Catechism, we are told that God is everywhere. He is present simply because He cares. And that is why we have to trust in Him, because He is around. He is with us. He is present. The entire faith, the revelation, you know, and then liturgy, the church, it's all about presence. The history of salvation from the very beginning of creation until now, it speaks of God's continuous presence in creation from the very beginning and now and future, a God who is present. That proves that you care and that you earn the trust of people because you are there. Even liturgy, the sacraments, is about presence. Mass is presence of God. That's why in the beginning I say we are celebrating the presence. Mass begins when we leave home, and then we drive to the church, we enter the church, we make genuflections and respect based on the altar because Jesus said, when 2 or 3 are present, I am here. The altar becomes the sacred presence of Jesus. We kiss the altar. We genuflect before the altar. It's presence. The Eucharist is about presence. Liturgy, the word proclamation of the presence of God. From past, present, and future, the same God talking. The Eucharist is God's greatest gift to us. Investing Jesus, dying on Calvary on the cross, the greatest form of presence, which is flesh and blood. He is really here because He cares. That's number one thing to earn the trust of people. You are there. You are present. So that's number one. You invest your presence in a relationship because that's how you get the love and affection of people around you. Second, you invest your time. Time. That's the essence of worship. How can you tell a person you love that person if you have no time and space for that person? Time. You invest your time. You want to assure that person that you truly are concerned about that person. So you don't mind spending time with a person. That's how you gain trust, trustworthy. Those are the 2 I's of investing, presence, and time. The second I is integrity. Integrity means that there is a coherence between what you say and what you do, which means that when you promise something, you fulfill it. That's integrity. That is also the meaning of loyalty. That's the essence of mercy. The mercy of God is loyalty. And you see that in Revelation. God promising, fulfilling generations and generations, and is the beauty of this history of salvation when God progressively fulfills His promise from the very beginning. When He promised, 2nd chapter of Genesis, to redeem mankind, He started with the family of Abraham. 12th chapter of Genesis, recorded history, telling Abraham with his family, cross the desert and go to this promised land where God will work out the history, the salvation of His people. Then, as if everything was forgotten, the Hebrews experienced problems, and there was famine in Israel. And then God renews that promise to Joseph, that Joseph, sold by his brother, became the governor of Egypt. And when he became governor, he allowed all the Hebrews, given them visa to enter Egypt. He gave them visa. That's why the second book of Exodus opens with Pharaoh looking at the Hebrews multiplying like ants in Egypt. And then the Pharaoh got frightened and he mistreated and enslaved the Hebrews. At this point, 14 generations have passed, as if everything was forgotten. And suddenly, in the wilderness of Midian, Moses, the burning bush, and the voice was heard, "Take off your shoes, you are standing on holy ground." And then Moses said, "What is your name?" And he said, "I am who am. I am the God of your father Abraham. Go back to Egypt and free my people." God renewed His promise. 14 generations. Then from Moses, again, the history tells us that Israel rose to power with David and Solomon. 14 generations later, Israel became a monarchy, the most powerful country in the world. And again, in spite of David's weakness, God renewed his promise to David. And then later on, generations have passed. They were conquered by the Babylonians and enslaved by Nebuchadnezzar. 25,000 people were brought to Babylon as slaves. God did not forget his promise. He sent Cyrus the Great of Persia to conquer Nebuchadnezzar, and Cyrus the Great declared a proclamation, let the conquered territories go back. God renewed his promise through Ezra by reconstructing the temple in Jerusalem. God fulfilled his promise. He's reliable. Integrity of the person of God. Then later on, 14 generations later, the Annunciation, the sending of the Messiah. Then centuries, the modern period, the medieval, the modern, in the Middle Ages, and then we were challenged by Reformation, and God sent again 4 saints to rebuild the church against the challenge of Reformation. God renewed again his promise, and until now, the church is still here because God is loyal, and God will never abandon the church in spite of all these trials and all this crisis, because Jesus told St. Peter, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. The integrity of God. That is why we trust God. If you want to earn the trust of people, you have to be loyal, fulfill your promise, if you want to be trustworthy. The last I that we will talk about is influence, mutual influence. We begin first with the person of God. How does God influence us? This is the essence of holiness. Holiness does not come from us because we are not capable of reaching God. Holiness comes from God. He gives it to us. We cannot be holy on our own because we are limited, sinful human beings. We can only be holy, and it is mentioned in the consecration, Lord, you are the source of holiness. When God gives us the grace, inspires us, and to draw us to Him, nobody can go to God unless God draws that person to Him. That is true holiness. You cannot fake it. You know, there are people who want to fake appearing to be holy. It's painful. Don't do it because you're forcing it. You know, if you are forcing it, it's painful. Holiness is spontaneous. It's coming from your soul because God has reinforced your soul with grace. It is effortless and smooth because it's coming from God. That's how God influences us. That is why when people, after so many years, go to confession and then start to live a good life, I tell them, God brought you here. You did not come here on your own. God engaged you already. He brought you here because He is your Father and He cares about you. You come here because you accepted the force of grace that God gave you. It is from Him. That's how God influences us. That is why we trust Him. And we also influence God. It's mutual. Because our prayers, our piety, and our faith, God responds to us. He inspires us. We also influence Him. That's the meaning of prayer. Petitions, intercessions, trying to influence the heart of God. So it's mutual. Mutual trust. Trust is a two-way thing. If you want to be trusted, you give trust. That's how it happens. It is not one-sided. The problem with one-sided trust is the other person is not really concerned about you. He wants to be nice to you because he's after something. I'm sorry, but there's such a thing as a fake nice person. You know? There is a fake nice person. That guy does not really concern about you. He wants something, and he will play with your emotions because he wants to control you. No, you don't. You don't allow that. You set the boundaries, and this is a good thing about bullies. You know, there are people who are bullies. You set the boundaries. It's my arm you are hitting, and I don't want you to do that. It's me you are hitting, and stop it. I don't want you to do that. People are controlling. It's once you want, they're nice because you want to give confidence, but they're really after something. Don't allow that. Because once they control you, they will destroy you and shatter you to pieces. Influence is two-sided. Mutual trust. That's what happens with the God who loves us, and we responding to that love. So, learn the essence of trust. Letter I, investing in presence and time, integrity, and mutual influence. You will discover smooth relationships. You will discover peace and joy.